All right, we're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. I guess we'll just go through the moment of silence again and everything. Do you think we need to do that?
Roll call first, yeah.
Okay, that'd be great. So, Madam Clerk?
Okay. Mayor Jones?
Here.
Vice Mayor Nunn?
Here.
Councilmember Dixon?
Here.
Councilmember Dodd?
Here.
And Councilmember McPartlin?
Here.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll please stand for a moment of silence and then we'll have the pledge. All right, thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. Oh, and by the way, Council, they needed that extra 5 or 10 minutes, so once we shut down, it takes a while to get back up on Zoom and all of that, so. But they're back up now, thank goodness. Brief announcements, Vice Mayor Nunn. Oh, no, sorry. Do we have any agenda modifications? Anyone?
No.
All right, hearing none. Move on to no proclamations or award. Brief announcements, Vice Mayor.
Yes, August 11th, the Sebastian River Area Chamber of Commerce Grill Out Night, 5:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. It's a great night in the city. Please come out and visit all the vendors. You can look at the chamber for the map and the information, but it's a great night in downtown Sebastian.
All right, thank you so much for that. Now we move to the section of public input for anything that's not on the current agenda. If anybody from the public would like to speak now on the public input, please come forward. Seeing no one from the audience, do we have anyone with their hand raised on Zoom?
Not this time.
All right, thank you so much. All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Council?
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any other discussion? Hearing none. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Vice Mayor Nunn?
Yes.
Councilmember Dixon?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Councilmember McPartlin?
Yes.
And Mayor Jones?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right. Committee reports or appointments.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we reappoint the 3 current.
Hang on, I'm not there
Okay.
yet.
Okay.
I'm not there yet.
Okay, yes, sir.
Committee reports. Does anybody have? I was thinking I had one, but I don't see my paper.
I had an Affordable Housing Committee meeting this past week. Great meeting, discussing lots of things going on within our county. One of the things that they talked about was what's going on there in Gifford Groves and what the county's working on with those properties, but also to remind people that the SHIP funding program is an opportunity for people to get help fixing things around their house, like roofs and septic tanks and things like that, or also home buying assistance. Our median level of income, or what's considered low income in Indian River County, is nearly $60,000 for a family of 4. So if you need help or you're a veteran, there's preference for veterans, please reach out to the county SHIP program for help if you need it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for that. There was something I had. I keep losing my mind. Recently, we had the elected officials. I can't think of the name of the
Barbecue?
Yeah, the elected officials oversight committee for the school board. And during that meeting, they were talking. You know, we've heard some stories before that we may run out of space in the schools. They may need other schools or whatever. But according to my information from that meeting. And by the way, I was voted the chairman of that committee on that day as well. So, yeah, okay. I don't know if it's congratulations, but actually you know, I learned something very important that I didn't think about. There are, ever since COVID, when kids went out of school and weren't going to school, we still have, I think they have about 1,200 students here in the county that are still homeschooled, so they basically have a lot of space in schools right now, so there's no need to build another school or anything right now, and they believe over the next few years that that would remain the same.
So why are they increasing their budget to build new buildings?
And there's one school that they're adding
increasing
on
their
to.
budget by like almost $1 million to build new buildings.
And
Yeah,
they're
they've
building onto one school that has portables or something right now, and they're adding on to that school, but no new schools are.
But take a look at what they just proposed in the newspaper for their new millage rate, and the reason that they proposed increasing it.
For buildings?
Buildings.
Yeah, they've expanded. I know Sebastian River Middle School expanded some space, and Treasure Coast Elementary Schools.
But if they don't need space,
Packed.
why are they doing it?
Exactly. I don't
think they
some
need
schools are full.
additional
Excuse me, I don't want to
property build
interrupt
a
in
school.
that.
They're building
Hang
an
on,
existing.
Mr. McPartland, what do you say?
I don't think they need additional land to build a new school. They're using the existing land and building on the building.
Right,
Yeah.
that's correct. All right, any other committee reports? All right, so now we'll move on to, item 9A, Mr. Dodd.
Well, I would like to move that we reappoint the 3 existing members of the Natural Resources Board that have asked to be reappointed to their current positions.
Second. Any discussion?
No?
All right, Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Dixon?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Councilmember McPartlin?
Yes.
Mayor Jones?
Yes.
And Vice Mayor Nunn.
Yes.
Motion carries.
And
All
just
right.
as an aside, there is still an opening for an alternate member on that group. So if anybody out there is interested in getting involved in stuff that the Natural Resources Board is concerned, there is an opening for an alternate member in that committee.
Yeah. So if the environment is your friend, please volunteer. And thank you to all the members of that board for their leadership in our environmental community.
Yeah, and it was definitely a great event, great turnout from the Natural Resources Board at our Treasure Coast Waterways cleanup this past weekend. They were awesome, and we had a lot of people show up, and let me tell you, it was really hot out there. Both my wife and I had to walk in the water to cool off a little bit, so. But it was really nice, and there was a lot of trash picked up, but I don't know what the numbers are yet. We're still waiting on the numbers to be compiled as to what the weight and everything that we recovered, not just here, but it's all along the Treasure Coast. I believe they had 20 locations all along the Treasure Coast. So, but I was looking for our numbers, what we picked up here, and we're still waiting on those to come in. All right, next item on our agenda under new business, item A, Mr. Benton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have Mr. Kilgore have a presentation on this to recommend setting the proposed millage rate for fiscal year 23-24 at 3.0503, and ask and direct the city manager to execute the appropriate documents. Mr. Kilgore.
Okay. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, we do this every year. It's required by statutes that we follow a certain calendar and go through certain procedures and forms that have to be executed. Always the warning is you can't go any higher. When you go, after you set the proposed millage, it's advertised on the trim notice and you can go lower, but if you go higher, you've got to notify everyone by first-class mail. Plus, it can delay the process, so. You know, we had a lot to include in this year's budget. We had obligated to 5% pay increases for basically all the employees. Group insurance, we've got in the budget, I've got a 10% increase built into our numbers. We're still talking with the insurance broker. He's not at or below that at this point, so that could be modified. We are including 7 full-time new positions. 2 of those are part-timers that we're suggesting be made full-time. So based on what we have included in the budget with the additional personnel and the expenditure levels needed for general fund, we would need a 3.0503 millage to balance to those numbers. That's like a 5% increase in the millage rate from last year's millage of 2.90550. This is a slide I just like to do to kind of to see where the tax revenue is coming from, because it's more than a factor of what millage is set, but it's also a factor of how many what amounts of reassessments we had and how much of additions we've had. So I did a comparison here about the budget shortfall if we didn't use the 3.0503. If you kept the same millage rate, you would be short in what we projected for the budget at $290,000. Certainly, if you went to rollback, you'd be short $846,000, and that's before the conversations earlier this evening. So this I present every year. It's just a chart that shows the various assessed values last year with the maximum increases that are allowed by law for the property appraiser to increase their assessed value. You can see that, for instance, if a property had taxable value of $250,000 last year, taxed at that millage rate, they paid $726 for the year. And with the 3.0503, they would actually pay $74 more than that, or $790. And I've extended it in this presentation to show, well, what about value? Because housing prices have gone up, taxable assessments have gone up, so I've showed the additional assessed value levels to extend it out. And you can see that a $400,000 taxable value last year paid $1,162. This year they would pay $1,261. It's 3.0503. $99 increase. On other properties that weren't homesteaded, then their increase would be $203 more than the $1,307 that they paid last year. I do this chart just to show the history of how we've compared to the rollback rate over time. You can see that we are 25% lower than the amount of millage that was levied in 2015. If you look at it over the time period, you see that we went through a lot of years of increases in the rate. And we've gone through now, it's peaked out and we've come down practically every year. So once again, we're adding the seven full-time positions in general fund. That's just to kind of keep our operations going. We've got some funding designated to what we're calling organizational efficiency, so we can try to adjust staffing or do what is needed to try to get more efficient, move projects along faster, and operate more efficiently. So adoption tonight of the proposed millage at the 3.0503 will go on the tax notices, the trim notice at 16.09% of the tax increase. And that's simply, they make us compute a rollback rate, and this is that the 16.09 is the percentage increase from rollback to the 3.0503. It doesn't have anything to do with actual revenues, it's just a comparison of the millage rates. So to sum it up, we are asking that you set the proposed millage at the 3.0503. And I do apologize, I think about the slides that were sent out had a mistake on these last couple of slides because I didn't update it to the 3.0503 from what I had on those same slides last year. Be glad to address any questions or help any way I can.
Anybody got any questions? Mr. McPartland?
Well, I spent a great deal of time with Brian and then also with Ken. And, I don't know about the rest of you, but looking around the town and then, also, I think this is where the importance of getting that strategic plan, because taking a look at the city, it's just my looking, there's been areas that have been neglected. And I think we are well behind on paving, and that was a result. We saw the last meeting when they had the paving study. The roads over time have gotten, the average for all of them, decreased. We're behind on stormwater, well behind on stormwater. After speaking to Karen, we're behind in personnel. I mean, we need to get ahead of this. I mean, when I started on council, the city employees were still taking furloughs, and that was also, we had put the kibosh on buying any kind of new vehicles. And I think, we're just trying to get by with budget. And I had talked to Ken about even, and again, we're just setting the trim right now. I mean, I would like to see us considering setting the trim at, 3.1955, which would raise an additional $290,000. And it would look like, I believe, a 21.6% increase. But I think the time is now. I mean, it has to be done. There are areas around the city that really need help. I mean, we were just talking earlier during the budget about the police department having to raise those salaries up. And then, it's only going to kind of come over into the general employees as well. And we need to retain good people, as well as I think we need to get a real good handle on these projects. I think Brian has done a fantastic job. I think Karen, there's a plan. But what we're proposing now is, I mean, we're still kind of like chasing our tail as far as I'm concerned. And I'll leave it at that, but I'm for going a little bit higher. And again, this is just setting the trim notice. We can have these discussions further during the budget hearing. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. I don't believe we can go above the number that was presented, right? We can go below it?
No, we go up.
We can?
We can do anything
This
we want.
time, yes.
Okay.
But one thing I think that's important to think about, and I don't disagree with anything that Councilmember McPartland said, but within the 3.0503, there's already several staff positions. This thing called Funding Designated or Organizational Efficiency Program, that's actually an opportunity. There's funds in there for the city manager to assess what he has to do to try to do organizational operational enhancements, and if need be, to hire staff to do that. So there's funds in the budget to accomplish that. There's funds in there to do the strategic plan. I know they're in the process of working on the RFP, but there's funds in there to actually perform the strategic plan. Hopefully, sooner than later, once the RFP goes out and we get a response to do that. And I don't disagree with the fact that, I think I've said this a couple times in meetings before, is that it's not the city manager's fault that he doesn't have staff, it's our fault because we don't give him money. And in this budget, we're kind of ponying up and saying, here's money to hire staff. And I think it's important. I was very pleased with the organizational efficiency process that the acting city manager has placed in here, and the money's placed in to do that. It's an enhancement to what we've been doing in the past. I was pleased with the stuff I was seeing about stormwater, especially the swale work being done with the streets. That's going to be done under a contract basis, which actually does change the categorization of that from an expense point of view. We're not talking about hiring a bunch of staff that we have to throw into the general fund and ad valorem tax to pay. We're talking about doing that through a contract basis, which we can use discretionary sales tax money for, if we contract with a contractor to do that work. So they're working through some processes that are going to maximize what they can do with this money. It's not a 16% increase. That's the interesting thing is that the state requires that you do that from rollback when you advertise this, but it's not a 16% increase. It's more like what, 10-something?
9%.
Roughly
5 to
9-something,
9?
yeah. Over what you paid last year. It's not 16%, but the state requires that when we advertise it from rollback.
Right, yeah.
I don't think they have to do that when the legislature does theirs, but they require that we do that. So, but it's not that, and I'm not uncomfortable at all with the 3.0503, but I do agree with what Councilmember McFarland said. Yeah, we just have to decide that the council has to pony up to this thing, and we have to provide the city manager and his staff the things that they need to get their jobs done.
Speaking to that, I know in our conversation, Mr. Benton, you said coming up with the money for the police, we were talking about that. That's kind of workable within this budget, but we talked about needing to remain competitive for all staff as a whole. How does that fit into this budget?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yeah.
So at this point, anything above and beyond what's presented in the current budget would require us to either cut the existing budget to allocate funds for it, or increase the millage as discussed tonight, or the third option is, in which we highly recommend not to do, is to utilize reserves.
Yeah.
So those are kind of our options tonight in regards to our discussions on funding for staffing and different things like that.
So in essence, we could propose a higher millage tonight just as a buffer to give them time to figure out where we need to be competitively with our salary, because we can always go lower. When we make our full decision later on, we can go lower because we can't advertise a rate and then be like, surprise, we want to go bigger. We could go closer to what Mr. McPartland said if we wanted to tonight, just to kind of, because I think one thing we may all agree on here is that the city is behind on many projects, and that we need to stop that, and we need to be more efficient, which I think our leadership within the city is really ready to roll on projects, and we too up here, I think, want to give them what they need to get going.
I agree with
Because our taxpayers deserve that.
I agree completely.
Okay.
Once again, if we give them the flexibility, we can always pull it back during
Exactly.
budget discussions. But if we don't give the flexibility, then we won't have the money, and
Right.
we'll have no other choice except reserves or cutting something else.
Right.
I'm not opposed to the number Mr. McParland said.
And I'm comfortable with the 3.0503. You know, listen, our taxing restraint history is excellent compared to other cities around us. We've been going the road back, but we cannot continue that, because in order to continue to provide the services that our residents need, we're going to have funding for that.
Right.
And if we kick this down the road this year and don't do anything next year, it's only going to compound over the next few years, so it'll actually be a huge increase that would make everyone balk if we don't do something now. And our staff and everyone else we need more staff. We need to pay our people better so that we can keep them. We don't lose them to other cities or other agencies. And it's very important that we, I think that we do this, and we need to ensure the funds are available to continue our plans and the progress that we've been making here in the city, so.
Mr. Kilgore, could I ask you to go to the chart with the 18-year history? And I asked for that for a reason. 2019, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over, our millage was actually at that year was 3.15. And it was higher than that, as you could see, for a number of years. And over the past 5 years, we've really cut back. We're paying the price for that right now. Our city is paying the price with things being behind, with our employees not being paid, comparable to other cities. We're not looking to pay, our road person for what they would make working for a commercial company. I don't think we could ever afford to do that. But to compare to other cities and other government organizations around us, I just think if we're going to take care of our city, rollback sounds wonderful until you say, well, why are all the potholes in my streets, and why is this, and why is this, and why do we have so few, employees fixing things, or maybe police officers that aren't covering areas? And that's due to the fact that we've been amazing stewards to the money, but I don't know that we've been the best stewards to the city. And I would propose that we move to Mr. McPartland's number.
So, Mr. Mayor, could I make a motion to set the proposed millage rate for fiscal year 23-24 at 3.1955 and direct the city manager to execute and submit the required forms?
Second.
What was the number?
3.1995. Was it 1955?
3.1955.
1955.
1955. All right, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Yes, I seconded.
All right, any discussion?
And to reiterate, that just means we're giving ourselves a buffer. That does not mean
Right.
we're trying to tax the people more, because we pay those taxes too, and we don't want to if we don't have to.
No, this is not the final.
That's exactly right.
This is cushion for them to figure out what to do about our employees.
Right.
And to make sure we're covered, and then we roll it in and do what we need to do at that point.
Yeah, and just for a point of fact there, our staff has already been cut back. They're running very lean. And sometimes things don't get done because we don't have enough staff or enough time to get things done, but,
We would have to add probably 25 people to get to a staffing level for the size of our city equivalent to some of the people around us.
Right.
So, we're not talking about adding it. We're, right, 3.2 or 3.3 FTEs per 100 population or something like that. And most cities around us are at 6 or 7.
Yeah.
So we would have to go crazy adding people to get to that point. We've been running, and that's the reason that things like stormwater and stuff like that have not only have we planned ourselves to death, but we also have not executed because we didn't have the staff to execute.
Right.
so I know, we saw that we have, if we would have gone, push for this 3.0503, that would have been 5% increase above last year's millage, right? Mm-hmm. And I know it's probably, I don't want to ask, I thought about asking you what the calculation is, what the percentage is for this.
The 3.1955 would be an additional 5% increase. So we'll actually be advertising on the trim notice 21.6%.
But that's from rollback.
But that's from rollback, not from, right, okay.
That's what people are going to see. Then.
Right, they're going to see that
Because
big
of the
number.
state statute, it's silly.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
that funny math.
Once again, we have to plan properly, because if we don't plan properly, then we do nothing except harm ourselves. So.
Yeah, we don't move forward at all.
It's not an easy decision, but quite frankly, if we don't do it, we're not living up to the expectations that the citizens have of the government and ourselves. So,
Right.
if there's
All right.
public input, let's ask for it.
Thank you, Mr. Kilgore. Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment? Yes, ma'am, come forward.
Grace Reed, Sebastian. Well, like I said earlier, a lot of my things are not necessarily money related, but wise. I agree with Mr. McPartlin, about having a higher proposed, that gives you that type of a cushion. Because there were several things that I saw in here that this city is behind on, but the first thing I want to say is to Mr. Benton. He was at our budget meeting. I watched the Natural Resources Board meeting, and I watched the Parks and Recreation meeting. Excellent job. This man is very knowledgeable about what he sees and where he knows where we need to go and where we have made a lot of missteps. But we're behind in a lot of areas. And one of the things that I want to ask, because nobody said anything about it, you addressed the $5 million indoor firing range, which when I asked the other night if it is not 100% funded by grants, it disappears, correct? And they said yes. So that's one thing I'm going to ask straight up, is if it's not 100% funded, let's not do that. We have too many other things that we need to do. There was an 11.5 million for canal restoration, I think, and part of it, the majority of it, was grant funding under the fund source. So is this the same grant that we're getting extended?
That's anticipated grants.
And it's anticipating grants?
It's anticipated grants.
Okay, so what happens, and this is going to directly tie into the bigger buffer, what happens if you don't get those grants? You still need to restore the canals. So where would that money come from?
We're going to have to deal with that.
Okay, that's a down the road. But a little forward thinking a couple of years ago probably would have solved all that.
Well, we had a very good report on that in 2015 and didn't do it.
Right. And another thing with the stormwater, and we did propose that $2 increase for the next year, but I in no way think that $2 is going to do it. It talked about they wanted to wait another year and a half before we increased it. It hasn't, revenues have not been meeting expenses for 3 years. And my question is, why didn't someone bring it to you or someone, we should have reacted a long time ago. When I looked at this budget, I thought we were playing so much catch up that it is ridiculous. And I'm really thinking, and I hate to bring this up because probably somebody's going to strike me or whatever, but there was an evaluation done in this room that I think was spot on. And because, and I know there's a lot of people that don't want to hear that and don't want to believe it, but there were a lot of things put on the back burner or weighted that shouldn't have been weighted or put on the back burner. And when they talked about the implementation of the garbage billing tonight, does that mean rolling it into the tax rolls, the process for getting it into the tax roll, or is there another idea?
No, that's still going in the tax roll.
It's still going in the tax roll, so that's what that implementation is. Okay.
Well, okay, but as of right now, today, without you coming up with a different option, as of right now, today, the plan is, on October
It's still the
1st,
tax
24, it goes on the tax rolls. Our city manager here may come to us in 2 months or 3 months or 4 months and have a much better idea. We'll deal with that when it happens.
I just wanted to make sure that that's what everybody in TV land is hearing, because when it says implementation of the billing,
Because what was said earlier was the enfranchise fee. That was the response to that. And what we did when Waste Management said they were going to bill for 15 months and absorb our losses, we agreed to let them keep the 3% franchise fee money.
right,
Okay.
yes.
So we're theoretically not collecting a 3% franchise fee. That's included in the bill, but that's money's going to Waste Management because
Right.
they're absorbing our losses for that 15
Yeah.
months.
And I just wanted to make sure that that was in there. I just really believe that, the very last thing I'm going to talk about is when we're talking about raising the police salaries and stuff and a lot of the other staff salaries. Shouldn't that have been taken into consideration during the initial contract negotiations? I mean, did we do a compensation study, and would that have
We
been where you would have gone ahead and just done that one big jump?
actually did that during the negotiations as a result of a salary survey that's now almost 3 years old.
Uh-huh.
So the problem, of course, is that the whole thing has expanded since then.
Okay.
But as part of the salary structure that the regular employees and the police employees got October 1st of last year was additional compensation beyond to make up for salary study shortfalls in salary. So we've already done that once.
Oh, okay.
It's just that we're gonna have to do it again. I hope we don't have to do it every year, but we're gonna have to do it again.
Okay, but
But
with all of the bounces in the salaries, and if we have to pay with canal restorations and stuff like that, are we sitting okay if we went down to the 2905, or are we still gonna have to be above?
No,
Yeah,
no, we're gonna have to go above.
Yeah, we would have
Yeah.
to go above.
correct.
Okay, I
We
just
don't
wanted
want
to
to
make sure
reduce
that-
the services to our residents.
But now the
That's
canal
what-
restoration doesn't come out of the general fund, which is what's revenue comes from ad valorem taxes. The canal restorations would have to come out of some other funding stream. That would not
Right.
come out of general fund.
I was just pointing out, if you didn't get the grants, it's gotta come from somewhere.
Right.
Still has to be done.
Well, when we did it north of 512, they did a bond issue. And we just paid last year. We made the final payment on that bond issue. So there are ways to finance that. We just have to, first of all, get the stormwater plan finished,
Exactly.
and then decide what can be done from a financing point of view and what has to be done from a work point of view.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Is there anyone else? Do we have anyone on Zoom?
I have two individuals with their hand raised.
Okay, bring the first one in.
This is Terry McGinn, calling from Pennsylvania. The first thing I want to tell you is I didn't miss the workshop. We were on Route 95 in traffic, but fortunately we were able to watch the workshop on YouTube. So we listened to the whole workshop. Secondly, I did attend our budget meeting that I'm a member of, and I would like to say everything that Grace said I agree with, but more importantly, I have 2 or 3 points to make. The first point is we need to take the 16.5% number and bury it someplace, because in social media, that's the first thing everybody's eyes went to, and the word was, we're gonna get a 16% tax increase. It's really a bad number, and we need to spend more time educating the public on what the real dollar tax number is. That's just the statement. I also agree that I had somebody who I respect a lot tell me that for years we were playing to the rollback, and we've let ourselves get in this situation, and it's time that we stood up and got some of these problems resolved. With the issue of the $2 item for stormwater management, we are 3 years behind, and $2 is probably not nearly enough to accomplish what we need to. And there was a long discussion during the budget meeting about it being added to the trim notice as an additional tax, like we have to add the trash collection. So I was glad to see Mr. McPartland bring up that number. I am 100% for it. And the whole budget committee, -1, was also voted for the higher millage rate, because this rollback thing has become a bad habit. And the city does need the money, and as long as I'm on the budget committee, I'll advocate that we budget enough to keep the city as good as it is. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, sir.
Oh, shoot. One other thing, can you take the slide down? While the slide's up on the thing, nobody can see who's speaking. Thank you.
We can see. Okay. Do we have another one? Someone else?
Funny guy.
We had one hand raised, but she has lowered it.
She lowered it. Perhaps there were questions were answered. All right, very good. All right, public input is closed. Council?
I do have one more question, if I could.
Okay.
Mr. Kilgore, Could you give us an idea, and this is probably as much for the public as it is for people watching, can you give us an idea of our total budget number and how much of that budget comes from ad valorem taxes?
Well, offhand, I can tell you that ad valorem taxes, franchise fees, and utility taxes are 90% of the funds we receive in general fund.
Okay,
If I remember, ad valorem tax is probably around 35.
okay, okay. Thank you.
All right, any other discussion, council?
I just kind of wanted to point out, with all the talk about how our city's been a proponent of rollback for the last several years, it's kind of like what Karen Miller brought up a couple weeks ago in regards to the roads, and how when we really let our roads deteriorate significantly, it costs us so much more to fix them than it does when we stay up on things and maintain them. And since we've just been pinching pennies and saving everybody money for many, many years, we're really having to put out a lot more to repair our city and get us back up to the quality that our taxpayers deserve. And, I don't think it's too much to ask to propose what we're proposing, and we're still hoping to not have to go the full 3.1955. But I think that's kind of how we've ended up in this pickle.
Exactly. We've ended up here because we keep kicking it down the road, and we
That's
can't
right.
do that. We have to
Not
continue
anymore.
to provide the services that our residents need. And in order to do that, we need funding.
Yeah. And the city has not been immune from inflation.
Exactly.
right.
Our insurance said we don't even know what our employee insurance increases are going to be this year. We're estimating 10% increases our employee insurance. That doesn't touch our vehicle insurances for all our vehicles. I know mine's went up. It doesn't include all the insurance on all the buildings we have within the city, our city insurance that we have. I mean, everything is going up, and unfortunately, we have to be able to cover the cost of all of that while taking care of the city as well. So, yeah, I think we have to at least prepare. We would be, in my mind, not doing the right thing if we didn't at least prepare for what might be needed.
All right, Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Councilmember McPartlin?
Yes.
Mayor Jones?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nunn?
Yes.
And Councilmember Dixon?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
All right, moving on to item 12B, budget amendment. Mr. Benton.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the city was allocated approximately $3.3 million from the American Rescue Plan Fund a couple years ago. At that time, City Council was tasked with allocating those funds to specific projects. And one of those projects was a Schumann Drive stormwater project that Council had decided to allocate $750,000 towards that project out of this funding. Based on our existing budget and our request to proceed with some road improvements a little bit quicker based on the plan we received last meeting, staff is requesting to reallocate those American Rescue Plan funds in the amount of $750,000 and add those to the road improvement fund that was funded for $500,000 for a total of $1.25 million out of the American Rescue Plan Fund. With that, the Schumann Drive project is not going away. The funds are just coming out of DST in fiscal year 24-25. There's still some engineering and design work that has to be done on that project. It was not a project that would be done this coming fiscal year, so we have allocated that to come out of DST funds in fiscal year 24-25. So the funding remains the same, it's just how we are allocating them out of the different funds for both of those projects.
Council, any questions for Mr. Benton?
Mr. Mayor, I move approval of the transfer of $750,000 to the street reserve fund.
Second?
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on this? Do we have anyone with their hand raised on Zoom?
Not at this time.
All right, Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember McPartlin?
Yes.
Mayor Jones?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nunn?
Yes.
Councilmember Dixon?
Yes.
And Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Item 12C is another example of an increase due to things over time. Mr. Benton.
So, back in 2019, the city put out an RFP for paving, roadway paving. And at that time, it was awarded to, this one specific agenda transmittal item is Ranger Construction. And with that, their contract is set to expire August 23rd of 2025. So we have not done road projects for the past, I think it was a year and a half, 2 years. And so we went to them in regards to our existing request, which will be later on this budget, or later in this meeting, to provide pricing, and they were unable to meet the CPI index that was in the contract that was agreed upon in 2019. So based on that, we have to come back to you all and request an increase that's higher than the CPI to go forward with having Ranger as one of our contractual agreements that we can utilize for the paving project. I will state that Ms. Miller has done a really good job in negotiations with Ranger and APS, which will come next. And she has looked at comparables. I would say if we go out to RFP again, we will not see the same price that we are seeing proposed by them today. And also, she's looked at other potential piggyback contracts that are higher as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Council, anybody have any questions from Ms. Miller or Mr. Benton? Ms. McPartland?
Mr. Mayor, I move approval.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a
Second.
So we have a motion, second by Mr. Dodd. Anyone from the public who would like to speak on this? Anybody on Zoom?
Nobody's raised their hand.
All right, public input's closed. Any discussion?
I just want to say thank you to Ms. Miller and Mr. Benton on getting this to the finish line. We have a lot of roads that need a lot of work, so thank you for getting this to the finish line so we can get it done, or at least get it going, I should say.
Yeah, finally, right? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Mayor Jones?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nunn?
Yes.
Councilmember Dixon?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
And Councilmember McPartland?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, item D, similar thing, increase. Mr. Benton.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. So this is a similar, as the previous item we just discussed. This one is specific to asphalt paving systems. There is one item I want to specifically reference in the budget documents, which is page 123. Just for clarification on that, it is attachment 4. It is the first page of the agreement of a potential piggyback contract with City of Kissimmee. I just want to say that we included this, or Ms. Miller included this document, just as a reference to show that there is an actual agreement. It is not the entire agreement. It goes from page 1, and then it goes over to their schedule of prices. So if anyone questions, the document stops in mid-sentence. It's just because we didn't include the entire agreement document. We just wanted to show it as a reference.
I'm glad you addressed that because I asked you all about that. That was some big question marks for me. I'm like, where's the rest of it, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, so now everyone has the explanation as to why that stopped on that page. All right. Anything else, Mr. Benton?
That is all I have for this one.
All right, any questions for Mr. Benton? Anyone from the public who would like to speak on this? Anyone on Zoom?
Nobody's raised their hand.
All right, public input's closed. Council, any other comments?
Move approval.
Mr. Dodd, move
Second.
approval, second by Vice Mayor Nunn. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Vice Mayor Nunn?
Yes.
Councilmember Dixon?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Councilmember McPartland?
Yes.
And Mayor Jones?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, what are we on, item E?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Benton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So item E is the road rehabilitation plan for 2022 through 2028. This, if you remember at the last council meeting, we brought forward the report that was done by Pavement Management Systems. And so this is kind of building off of that. This is introducing the entire 7-year plan to you all. And with this, since the previous two items were approving contracts or allowing us to go above the CPI index on those contracts, this item is presenting the plan, but also requesting approval for the funds that are identified to move forward with fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23 road paving plans. As soon as we can get with the contractors, get those scheduled out. And just as a reminder on this, we are developing the RFP for swell work that will go out to bid, and we will quickly, as soon as that comes back, it'll come to you all for approval, and then we will work to get those swell work contracted out for fiscal years 22 and 23 as they're doing the paving.
All right,
And Ms. Miller is here if you have any specific questions.
yeah, so we're all caught up on 20 and 21 projects? 2021 projects?
As far as paving projects
Yes.
or swell work project?
Paving,
So the paving was completed
okay.
for those fiscal years.
And was there any swell work doing that's gonna be included in this?
So we will not include that swell work in this. That swell work is currently being done by our staff in stormwater and roads. So they're currently doing that work. So it'll kind of give us a good comparison when we have a contractual, and we'll have a comparison of what it costs for us to do contractual swell work versus utilizing our staff and the time it takes. So we'll have a good comparison. That was our plan to go forward in the next fiscal year with contracting that swell work out. So we'll have a good comparison as we go forward for funding and explanation for you all.
Yeah, so I'm very excited to see this road paving move forward because we have some bad roads in the city that needs to be taken care of. And this is awesome to hear that we're definitely moving in the right direction now. So thank you guys so much for that. Any other comments from council?
I'd kind of like to see these maps put on the website or something, so people can bring them up and look at them, if you're willing, you want to do that?
No, so I know one of the plans, and we discussed it with the report last week, is that Ms. Miller has been working to get the entire report with the roads and all the allocations onto the website. So we'll have everything on there. The one thing I caution is for people in future years, remember, we will reassess this program at some point in the next 3 to 4 years. Mm-hmm. So if it shows that your road is scheduled to be repaved in 2028, once we get the new plan that comes back in 3 to 4 years, it may alter that a little bit. So just be cognizant of that as we go forward in the future, that it's not set in stone. It may alter a little bit depending on what we find on other roads as the assessment goes forward.
One of the other things to caution people, I think, on is that if you're one of those people that has your road in the 22 timeframe, we're still at the mercy of supply line issues and labor issues. And so all we can do is let a contract for somebody to do the swale work or to do the road work. They may take 6 months longer than we thought they were going to take to do it, and there's not much we can do about that. It's really difficult. Now, we probably can put some penalty stuff in a contract maybe, so we can actually try to work through that process with them, but there's really not much we can do with that. So these schedules are somewhat flexible because of external circumstances we might come up with.
Yeah, but the key is that we're moving forward now.
Yes.
This is the most important thing, that we are moving forward, and our residents know that we are moving forward with some of these paving projects that is long overdue, so absolutely.
And Mr. Mayor, if I can, I just want to provide a little bit of clarification. As far as, the contracts going forward, they are still the same contracts that were approved in 2019. Right. So we're just approving the additional schedule of unit prices for that. So that's something that when we go back out to RFP, we can include, timelines and deadlines and completing task penalties at that time. So I just want to state that we're not going to change the contract at this point. We're just still utilizing the same contract.
That's under the current ones for this next 2 years, right? Or 3 years?
It's for fiscal years 22, 23.
Okay.
I know Ms. Miller is speaking with them to see if they'll continue the same pricing for fiscal year 24, but this is the pricing for the fiscal year 22, 23 that we're currently agreeing to. If they come back with increases for 24, we at that time may consider going back out to bid because the contract does expire in 25.
Okay, very good. I like the fact that we're moving forward. No need to beat that. Any other questions or comments from council?
One last question. So on the site, there will be an interactive map as well that people can look at. That's still going to be there, correct?
That is correct. It'll be an interactive map where they can click on the road and actually see the the car that was driving down their road and see what it actually looks like from the car that pavement management used.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, is no more, did I ask for public input on this yet?
No.
No? Anyone from the public who would like to speak on this? Anyone on Zoom?
Nobody's raised their hand.
All right, public input's closed. No other discussion from council, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, do we have a motion on this one?
We didn't have a motion yet?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the road rehabilitation plan for 2022 to 28 and authorize the city manager to execute the appropriate documents for construction work for fiscal years 22 and 23.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. I guess I'm getting hangry, that's why I'm moving faster, I guess.
Well, you've been eating your lunch over there.
Well, no, I had to stop. All right, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Councilmember Dixon?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Councilmember McPartlin?
Yes.
Mayor Jones?
Yes.
And Vice Mayor Nunn?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, item F, Mr. Benton. Are you?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to press the button quick. I apologize.
Come on, let's go, get it going.
So this is acceptance, of a FDP Resilient Florida grant, that will allow us to complete a comprehensive vulnerability assessment, that is required by Florida statute. So this grant funding will cover, the next item is, you'll see that assigns it to a specific contractor, but this grant funding will cover 100% of the cost for this assessment.
Oh, awesome. Any questions for Mr. Benton?
So this is for the coastal resiliency plan?
Correct. This is
related to.
a required assessment and evaluation that we have to do for that plan per statute.
I love grants.
Do we
I
have
move approval.
I love, what, okay, okay, we had a motion, do we have a second? Second?
Sick, yeah, go.
Okay. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on this? No one in the audience, on Zoom?
No one has raised their hand.
All right, public input's closed. Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Councilmember McPartlin?
Yes.
Mayor Jones?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nunn?
Yes.
And Councilmember Dixon?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, moving along to item G, Mr. Benton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So first I want to apologize because Ms. Frazier did a great job on getting the grant funds for this. And now as we move forward, this is allocating a CSA agreement, consultant service agreement with one of our existing contract consultants, Kimley Horn and Associates, to do the plan update for the city, is this item. So if you have any questions, Ms. Frazier is here, but once again, she did a great job getting the grant funding that 100% covers this expenditure.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ms. Frazier. Great job on that, so we appreciate that, absolutely. Council?
I have just one question. All the task due dates are 6/30/26. Is that because of some state requirement that they deal with it that way, or are they rolling this in with some greater resiliency plan structure or something that's 3 years from now?
Good evening. Yes, it is actually federal dollars, and it was actually Ms. Miller who put this grant in, so we thank her, but then once we got it, surprise, surprise, we then worked together to identify all the different tasks that we could put in that. One very important is that we're going to work with the LMS at the county and actually update our LMS plan and make sure that we have the applicable projects identified in our stormwater master plan. It all comes together and coalesces together. So we're going to make sure that those projects are within our LMS plan, which is very important for future funding. I just always want to say those things so you know that we're not doing these things just to keep busy. So your question was the 3-year, usually these are federal grants. These are federal dollars, so usually they give you these long times to get them done, but we are not going to take that long, obviously.
Okay. So
And this update is required, if I may, this update is required because when we got the grant 5 years ago, I believe, to do one of the first resiliency plans here in the county, everybody was utilizing different modeling and different technical criteria. DEP recognized that, came back and said, hey, We need everybody to be on the same playing field so we can measure things correctly and at the same level. So they gave us the money to do it. So that's a good thing, but they're federal dollars, and we're gonna get this done in a year.
Okay, because one of the things that I remember from the last one, and it's real fuzzy in my mind, but I think there were some issues potentially with the viability of parts of Indian River Drive as the water levels raised. And I was just thinking that if that turns out to be consistent with the new plan, then there might be some things we need to do from the perspective of Indian River Drive to prepare for that. That's why I was concerned about everything not being done until 26, but what I'm hearing you say is there's gonna be a better schedule at some point in time on this, and we'll be able to.
Well, Kimberly Horn is going to
Yes.
get this grant done within the next year. I don't see
Okay,
any problem
all
with
right,
that. But
all
then
right.
again, it'll coalesce with our stormwater master plan, so.
Because I know they're spending a lot of money south of us to do things like raise outfalls and do stuff like that because of that. I know that no one in the federal government wants to talk about global warming, but they sure want you to prepare for it. I do remember there was issues with parts of Indian River Drive as the sea levels rise, and so it's something that we'll have to deal with at some point in time. All right, thank you.
Anybody else?
No, ma'am, thank you so much. All right, do we have a motion?
I'll move that we approve is this a?
CSA.
CSA
All
21.
right, I'll move we approve the project for Kimberly Horn Associates.
Second?
So we have a motion and a second. All right, is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on this? Anyone on Zoom?
No one has raised their hand.
All right, thank you so much. Public input's closed. Any more comments from council?
No.
Mr. McPartland?
No?
Okay, Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember McPartlin?
Yes.
Mayor Jones?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nunn?
Yes.
Councilmember Dixon?
Yes.
And Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, next item, Mr. Benton, is item 12H.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this item is, the city had a lease agreement with Indian River State College for usage of areas at the old historical schoolhouse next door. The college informed the city months ago that they would be pulling their operations out of the building. They have vacated the premises. They provided the city with a request to terminate the lease, and what we're at this point asking is for you all to accept the lease termination. The guidelines within the lease termination says they have to give us 90-day notice, which was pretty close to the time they supplied the lease termination to us. But they want it effective immediately, and we're asking you all to accept it effective immediately so that we can begin discussing with other possible groups, organizations to utilize the space at the old schoolhouse.
Yes. I'll make the motion that we approve immediately.
Second that approval.
All right.
She was going to do it.
I was.
All right, is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on this? Anyone on Zoom?
Nobody's raised their hand.
All right, public input's closed. Yeah, this is gonna be great because I know that there's other organizations and groups that would like to move in that building.
Yeah,
So
they're
since we
ready.
have the space and one of them is our BSOs here in Sebastian. They're getting kicked out of their building there. We're hoping to work with them on getting them in that building over there. So that would be awesome. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, you know,
Oh,
one of the
sorry.
things is,
I can't hear you.
I understand we have somebody who could move in who would be very great, but I hate to see that Indian River State College is leaving. This was a partnership we had for numerous years at the old Sebastian Schoolhouse, and I mean, dual enrolled children from the high school could attend there instead of having to go down to the Mueller campus, as well as returning adults. And one program I hope they're gonna be able to assist is the Small Business Administration Program that they ran out of that office, but I think when COVID hit, a lot of it died down. Hopefully they can revamp that up, and they have the Small Business Administration, which has grant programs for not only people who want to start a business, but existing businesses to take them to the next level. And I would hate to see that lost. Maybe they could come and hold a couple of days a week at City Hall or something.
All right, thank you so much, sir. Any other comments? Madam Clerk?
Mayor Jones?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nunn?
Yes.
Councilmember Dixon?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
And Councilmember McPartlin?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, moving on, city attorney matters.
I have no announcements. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Benton, I know you have some extra stuff there, right?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So first thing I do want to recognize and acknowledge the hard work that staff put into the budget. Obviously, we've got a little bit more work to do after tonight's meeting, but I want to thank all of our staff and specifically Mr. Kilgore for kind of holding my hand and walking me through it. And it was a little bit of a learning process, but I appreciate all their assistance and their hard work for the budget and presenting it to you all tonight. So second thing I have is I spoke via email with the county administrator a couple of times over the last couple of days in regards to the city county council commission meeting. And he has requested Mr. Lanahan from the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council to provide us with a potential plan, a timeline of setting up the meeting. And I believe his request is to have Mr. Lanahan facilitate the meeting between the city of Sebastian and the county. So with that process is starting to move forward. I'm going to be reaching out to each of you over the coming week or so to get your requests for what you would like to see in the meeting. Staff will also have discussions on a staffing level as to what we would like to see, and then we'll bring it back to you all for a discussion item. It'll probably at this point be the second meeting in August, and in discussions with County Administrator Mr. Tikanich, that is an acceptable timeline from their standpoint, because he still has to discuss it with his commission as well. So I just want you all to know that we're moving forward with that process, and we will be asking for your input and your ideas on discussion points for the meeting. So any questions on that? None? Okay. So the second thing is also in discussions with the county administrator. He has asked if the city is interested in being a partner or being, involved in, the county is looking to start the process of implementing anchoring limitation areas throughout the county. Basically what that is it would set a timetable for the length of time that vessels could moor within those areas. So basically what he's asking from us is for staff to develop maps, do some GIS coordinates that would then be presented to the county or presented to you all. If you agree with it, we develop a resolution and then take it to the county in support of the areas around in the Sebastian area. So I'm just looking to see if that's something that you all are interested in before we put too much staff time into that.
I'm definitely for it, absolutely.
I would like to hear staff's opinion on that as you move forward. If it's something that makes sense for our city and for our river, then I think that's something, if you and your staff come up with you think this would be good and benefit us, then yes. But if you think that it might not benefit us, then no.
Yeah, Mayor, if I may, I can speak to that specifically now. I know I've had numerous discussions with our police department, and also, previously, Mr. Carlisle, we had discussed, and I think does have a benefit to the city to have these areas. We do have an issue with derelict vessels, vessels that may or may not be adequate that are moored within our boundaries within the city on the waterways. And if you notice that the most recent hurricane that we had, some of those came to light with, causing damage to some docks. And we still have a couple of those vessels, one that is still sitting on a dock. But those are our concerns. It's a safety concern for the city. The limitations, I don't know exactly the number of days. I want to say it's probably 45 to 60 days that they could moor. But that's all developed through the state statute that the county would have to follow when they establish these areas. And I had our attorney, she did a little bit of research today on the matter. So I know she'll have further research as we go forward with this to ensure that we're following the correct policies and protocols per the statute.
Okay. Definitely encourage us to, if it makes sense, if it can help fix some of those problems, then definitely in my mind, yeah.
Yeah, so as part of being a member of the Beach and Shoreline Preservation Committee, we've discussed those things too, and that's what we deal with on that committee in the county is the derelict vessels and things like that. So it's a big problem out there in our river, not only just in the Indian River, but also in the St. Sebastian River as well, so.
People don't realize how small amount of power we have over those vessels.
Yeah.
They don't realize it's all in the state's hands, and literally, we have very, very little power. So maybe this will help.
Are you on board with that, Mr. Dell?
I'm on board, sir.
Are you on board? Mr. McPartland, are you on board?
Aye, aye, Captain.
All right, so you have your orders on that. Anything else?
That's all I have for this evening, sir.
All right, thank you so much. Next up is City Clerk. Okay, again.
May I ask the clerk a question?
Yes, ask her a question.
I know,
I'm gonna ask one
I feel
too.
like we've discussed this, and for some reason, my notes, I'm not finding it. Are we having the first meeting in August?
Yeah, on
The
the 8th.
Wednesday before the FLC League meeting?
No, on Tuesday.
It moved to
We
We moved it to
Tuesday,
Tuesday, thank you.
yeah.
I was looking at the agenda and I wasn't finding the future date, and my notes were not helping me.
We
so-
moved it to the Tuesday
Okay, thank
before.
you.
Okay. All right, City Council matters, Mr. Dodd.
All right.
Let me cut my mic off so I don't say it.
Yeah, you might want to. Okay, I'm going to bring up a topic that I think is important. I'm sure you guys as well said the same thing that I did. When we offered Mr. Benton the interim job of city manager, I had in my mind several things I was looking for in performance for the city manager. And he and I had some conversations. And I'm going to tell you, I'm extremely satisfied with his performance today. He's met, in my mind, the expectation I had for what a new city manager should be doing for the city of Sebastian. I think he's been well received by the staff. I think he's done a bang-up job on the budget. I want to give Ken every bit of, I don't want to pull away from Ken's glory on the budget because he's the master of he's like Obi-Wan Kenobi of the city when it comes to that. But I think Brian's done a great job. I think he's got some great ideas on some things that he would like to do. And so I'm going to ask the council if there is a consensus for us to direct the mayor to negotiate a contract with Mr. Benton for the permanent city manager's job.
Yes,
Totally agree.
definitely.
Mr. McPartland? He's not here, so we got to call
I've
him out.
I've been very, very happy with Brian. I mean, I've talked at length with Brian about that. The one thing that could be a cause of concern, and I don't have it, is about him having residency in the city of Sebastian. He does own a home, not here. I would make it, as kind of a caveat, and I discussed this with Brian, if that potential kind of came, that the pay would be 10% less. And then once he established residency, he could get that 10%. Because the one thing about Brian, I know he's here before 7 o'clock in the morning, and typically here after 7 p.m. because he tries to beat the traffic both ways. And he's always very engaged, very responsive, and he's got a great idea guy. So that's the one thing I would like us to keep in mind in any kind of negotiations for a contract, because I don't want to put any undue hardship on Brian or his family. And, he's been special.
Okay. I will tell you, I have not discussed this with him at all. I mean, I haven't said to him I'm planning on doing this, so, he may tell you no when you talk to him, but I don't think so. So, if there is a consensus, then, I guess, Mr. Mayor, it would be up to you to decide whether you want to have some council input at a meeting, or whether you feel you can go forward with this. Under our procedure, it's you're responsible for doing a contract, so you don't necessarily, if you feel comfortable that you can move forward, I have no problem with you doing that.
I pretty much have a contract all done, but we'll have to go through it with Mr. Benton, and I don't have a problem with that. The only concern I have is that we would have to discuss this residency thing and the vehicle, and this is something that, we'll have to talk to, Brian about.
Yeah, and of course, we've already made, I think the council's already made a decision that vehicle allowance is the way we want to go with that, so, yeah.
Exactly.
But,
I'd like to say, though, the job that Mr. Benton doing is amazing. He's doing a great job, better than I can ever imagine, or even though I imagined pretty good. The employees are happy, the citizens that are dealing with him, the boards that are dealing with him, the citizens that pay attention are noticing him and his work. I don't want to, I do have a concern about the residency, and I have discussed it with Mr. Benton, and I don't feel that reducing his pay is a fair, he's going to be doing the job, and this man could not be any more invested in this community than if he lived here today. With interest rates and everything at 7 to 8% right now, it would be a crazy time to force him to buy a house here. I think that we could probably set maybe a year timeline on moving to Sebastian in that contract or something along those lines, but I'm not for limiting his pay. He deserves every cent of pay of the job because he's doing it every day.
I agree with Mr. Nunn.
Yeah.
Brian has been a breath of fresh air. He's got innovative ideas, a ton of energy. He works great with everybody. We were having our conversation the other day, and I said, man, I feel like the city of Sebastian's really developing a dream team. Our leaders are fantastic, and with Brian at the helm, we've got great things ahead, and I know he's got young children, and they have discussed moving here, and I think a year timeline. School's just about to start. We can't uproot kids from their school at the start of the school year. Give them till next summer to get here and get established, and punishing him by decreasing his pay, that's just cruel.
Yeah.
I'm on to what Mr. Nunn has to say with that.
All right, so I think, because I just went through this not too long ago, I negotiated a couple contracts, and I was getting prepared for the other contract, city manager, so we're pretty close there, and I understand that, so everything else I'm good with, except that I need a consensus from you guys, what you want to do, what you want me to talk about in those negotiations about the movement from there to here, how long, and all of that, so.
We're talking about providing a vehicle allowance, so there's not any real issues that we had before with people getting upset.
Right.
I personally don't have any issue whatsoever with providing appropriate time for him to consider the relocation to the city. I really don't have any issue with that. I think that's between you and him in the conversation.
Yeah.
I think the salary level would not be what you were anticipating in that last contract you were talking about, because we were talking about a contract for a city manager who's been here 4 years.
Right.
Or 5 years. But I think that you can handle that. I have great faith in you, Mr. Mayor, in handling this contract.
I'm just not,
I think we should, I think a year tentative time is there, and
Yes.
that puts us to next summer, which
That's
is
right.
why I give the year.
But
And if it's
you should have
worse.
a conversation
yeah,
with him about that.
Yeah, if it's
Yeah.
worse, then we
Yeah.
come back and talk about it and change it.
Exactly.
yeah,
if we need to.
we'll talk about
if you
it.
come back to us with a contract that says something other than a year, and you're gonna tell us your reasons, and as long as we agree with those reasons, we're okay. If we disagree, then we'll say it. So,
Right.
I think you two need to have the conversation
We will.
with him on that, and I would, my thing is that there's a lot of stuff that he's talking about doing that I think we need to just get past this interim thing and get on to the
That's right.
final
Make
thing and
it
get moving
permanent,
with
so
it.
we
Yes.
can do it, right?
Agreed.
And I would hope that we can do this, if you don't feel like you can, but we can do this by our next meeting. If you feel like you can get it done in that time
Wait a
frame.
minute, what's the day?
Can you get it done by next week?
No, it's not gonna happen. It'll be for the second meeting in
Second meeting
Second meeting
in
in
August,
Yeah,
that's fine.
we can
Yes.
set up something and get it done by the second
Second
meeting
meeting
in
in
August.
August is fine.
But not this meeting, because it's the one that's coming up, because then we're gonna be away
Oh,
to
that's
the
right.
FLC
Okay. So,
and
yeah.
all of that, so.
Yeah, the second meeting in August is fine.
Second meeting, so we'll start working. I'll get with, our attorney, and we'll start moving forward with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
And one last thing, and it's got nothing to do with any of this stuff, is just I want to thank the staff. This budget, it was very difficult on everybody doing this budget, I think. And I want to thank the staff for the work that they've done in that. And I want to thank Mr. Kilgore, Mr. Benton, and the crew for the work that they put into that budget process. This is not an easy decision for us to ask for this kind of money from the citizens, and they spend an awful lot of energy trying to make sure that they could accomplish the things that we've asked them to accomplish with as little increase in taxes as possible. I think that people don't recognize that they've done a lot of heartache over that, so I want to thank them. Thank you.
Absolutely. Mr. McPartlin?
Oh, yeah, well, just to be clear, I didn't say to give Brian less unless he moved. I said me and Brian had a conversation about if that came up and some other council members or citizens were not happy with the residency thing, that would be like a caveat. I've been perfectly happy with Brian, and everybody up there seems to make all these decisions for Brian, and Brian didn't check with his boss at home yet. So that's going to be a big, well, hopefully not a big issue because Brian's fantastic. But just notification again is that Colonel Marty Zickert passed away at the beginning of July, and they're going to have a memorial service for him on Memorial Island in Vero Beach on Saturday the 29th, starting at 0900, and they'll have plenty of seating and water and shade for people. They will have golf cart transportation back and forth for those who need it. And one of the requests from the Ziegert family was, if you do attend, to wear something colorful, because that is what Marty would have wanted, not wearing black. So that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you for that, Bob. Are you going to be there to represent the city? Because I have another obligation that day, and I wouldn't be able to do it, so.
I'm out of town. I'm in North Carolina.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
All right. Thank you very much for that. And I have nothing further. I think I've said enough for me tonight. Mr. Nudd.
Yeah, for those watching, I'm sure I'll hear tomorrow about how the city, oh my God, did you see how much money they spent? All the money, they're just throwing it around like it's free. Trust me, every cent that we talked about spending tonight was thought about and worked through. And if you think it's hard for us to come up here, it's even harder for staff to put it together and recommend these kind of numbers. So know that we didn't just sit here and make this decision. The staff has worked really hard to come to these numbers, to put forth the things that need to happen. Yes, we're spending a lot of money with getting the roads done, but they've got to be done. We're spending money to get all those other things done. It's stuff that has to be done to take care of our city. So I hope you all see that as you look forward and see what we're spending. This budget is available for anybody to look at, to see every dollar this city is going to spend this year. It's available. If you want to get a copy, you can call our clerk and she will get you either a digital copy, or if you want a paper copy, they can figure out how to handle that. There might be some cost for a paper copy, but please, if you want to know what's going on, this book has every single cent we're going to spend for the next year planned in it, ready to go. You can see everything. So that's all I have tonight. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. Last but not least, Ms. Dixon.
Yes, I meant to bring it up last meeting and I forgot. So I just wanted to thank Sebastian Police Department and especially Rad Kids Officer Hart for the Rad Kids that they put on at the end of June. It was. My children were there for a refresher, and there were probably 10 or 12 other children from Sebastian there in attendance, and they did such a great job. It's amazing. For anyone who doesn't know, it just kind of gives children confidence, and it teaches them kind of how to defend themselves in a variety of situations. And they all come in the first day and they're all kind of quiet and meek and not sure how to handle these situations. And by the end of the week, when the officers dress up in their pads and they come up behind them and grab them, they know how to scream for help and get away, and it's just absolutely wonderful and a very empowering program that our police department puts on for our children. They do have programs for women, they have programs for men. It's a de-escalation program. It's not self-defense for our men, but in fact teaches them, because I asked, My daughter just turned 13, so I said, this was her last Rad Kids. I said, what can she do? And they said, self-defense for women in a couple years. And I said, well, what about my son when he gets older? And they're like, well, for young men, we have de-escalation. And then also for our senior citizens, they have classes for them too. And it's all free, and you get a certificate. And it's just a great program, and our police officers are so wonderful. Our SPD, they put out information on our social media, so if you see something advertised, I highly recommend that you do it, because you come out a different person, and you can take these courses over and over again as a refresher, because it's always good to have it in the back of your mind. So just wanted to thank SPD for that. My kids were just so happy to do it again. They had done it back in 2019, and it was a great refresher course. So thank you.
All right, thank you so much. There was one thing I wanted to let everybody know. Through the legislative session, they allocated $252 million in non-recurring funds for the local government housing trust fund. That's for the SHIP program for fiscal year 23-24, an additional $109 million in non-recurring funds from the State Housing Trust Fund for the SAIL program for the fiscal year 23-24. So just putting that out there so that there's a lot of funds out there available to people. All right, so is there anything else? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned.